creating an alpha channel. Channels. To locate channels, navigate right next to layers. Channels is always next to layers. If you can't find your channels panel, you can always navigate under your window menu and locate channels. So inside channels here, channels store the color information about the image, and it really is determined by the color mode. They house that color information for each layer or layer mask. Channels are created at the same time that the image is created. So the minute I save this as a Photoshop document, I get channels. The number of channels, like we mentioned, determined by the image mode. So when you look at what I have here, I have RGB listed at the top. This is called my composite channel. And really the composite is just a combo of all of the default channels. So every image has at least one channel. Sometimes with RGB, CMYK, some of these specific color modes, we're going to have a composite. So it's just a mixture. It's a viewing mode. It really is not a real channel. It's just a composite viewing channel. So we can see what it looks like with all of the channels that are turned on. The red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel. So those store color information for each one of those channels. Because this is an RGB graphic, it's made up of red, green, and blue. This shows me the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue. Remember that RGB works a little bit different than what you've learned in painting class. RGB is on a scale or measurement of 0 to 255. And when you have all the lights on, let's go back up to color. Let's turn this to RGB sliders. So at all the lights on, 255, 255, 255, I actually get white. All the lights off, I get black. So these are dealing with a grayscale amount of a percentage of color. So where you see white, look at where you see white in the blue channel or the lighter colors. Now look at what we see here. So this is the amount of blue that's being used. And notice in the white areas, we actually have white in all of these. So it's kind of a reversal, almost a negative feel. So it takes a little bit of time to kind of become accustomed to what the channel is trying to tell you. Now, these are then the default channels. The red, the green, and the blue are my default channels. In this example, I also have a spot color channel and an alpha channel, and we'll look at those in a moment. If I were to have a CMYK document, I would have CMYK listed at the top. I would have cyan, magenta, yellow, and K for black. So I would have 4 default channels. Like I mentioned, every image has at least one channel and can have a max of 24 channels. So let's look a little bit more in detail at this channels panel. Like I mentioned, it lists all of the default channels. We're able to manage the channels here. So with the composite always being at the top, we have our defaults. Then always will come the spot color and the alpha. And this is by default. I can do some reordering. So channels have the same properties as the layers panel in the fact that I have this eyeball for what indicates the visibility. Just as I do in my layers panel, I have my indicates layer visibility here. I also can rearrange. I can click and drag to move things around. Okay, I have a thumbnail on each channel as well that gives me some more information. And if I want, I can view these color channels in color actually. Now I'd always get back to the default. You're going to go back up to your composite. So I can choose to view my layers in color. To view my layers in color, I'm going to navigate up to the edit menu. Under the edit menu, I will look for preferences. This is on a PC. Now I'm on a Mac, so I'm not going to find preferences under the edit menu. Instead, I need to navigate under my Photoshop CC and look for preferences there. And we're looking for the interface section. You can go to general and navigate through by using the next button, but I'm going to go straight to interface because this is where I know my setting is at. So under interface, I can choose to check mark down here, show channels in color right here. If I turn that on and then click OK, now I see my channels in color. It's not really the right color though, if you can tell. It's still the negative effect. It's just indicating that this is the green, this is the blue, you know, this is the red. It's not really giving me any more information about the color. So in my mind, this is more almost irritating because it masks the grayscale values that I'm really looking at. So I'm going to navigate back under preferences, back to interface, and I'm going to turn them off and click OK. We have a couple of other icons here at the bottom. So just as layers menu has a new layer icon, we have a new channel icon and a delete current channel icon. Then we have two additional icons here. One is to load the channel as the selection, and one is to save the selection as a channel. So this comes into play when we're dealing with alpha channels. To add specific color information, we are going to work with alpha and spot channels. Let's talk about alpha channels first. Alpha is just the default name that we get when we save a selection in channels. So I can choose to rename this completely. So I'll rename this as Parrot so you can see what happens when I make a new one and how that works. So an alpha channel is just basically creating, storing masks. It's preserving a selection. So I'm able to do some manipulation. Let's go back. Let's go to layers here. I'm going to double click to unlock this. So let's just say I want the sharp beak here. I'm going to navigate to my quick selection tool. Let's just see what happens here. Oh, that did pretty good. Let's see if we can get the bottom. Hey, look at that. Okay, so that's what I want to save. Let's just pretend it took me hours to get this selection perfect. And now I don't want to lose that selection. So in the past, you may have saved your selection and not realize quite where it went. To save a selection, I can go under my select menu and save selection. It does say channel here. That's our key in this document. Now the weird thing is if you have multiple documents open, you can save this channel in a different document. So even though I made a selection in this document, I can save this alpha channel in another document. You can actually copy and paste alpha channels from one to the next. So I can name it. This is my example. We're going to click OK, and now Control D to deselect. Okay, so now my selection is gone. Where did that actually save to? If we go to channels, here it is. So in channels then, with these alpha channels, we're able then to, like we said, we can manipulate, we can isolate, we can protect parts of an image. Channels do not print, so these will not be visible in any print media. They do increase the file size, so you do have to be aware you can't just go crazy saving absolutely everything that's unnecessary because your file size will jump tremendously. Alpha channels are great for bringing graphics into, say, InDesign or in an animation tool like Edge Animate or Flash. So alphas do have a purpose. Now, if we wanted to go back and let's do a selection again here. Let's see if we can get the chest of the bird. Well, that didn't work so well. Let's see if we can get something that's, you know what, I'm going to go for just the eye. Let's deselect. Let's see, there we go. We want just that piece. So if I have another selection here, if you can see what I've got going on, I can go right to the channels menu, and remember I said there's some couple icons here at the bottom. We have save selection, and then we can load. We don't have anything to load right now, but I do have a selection I want to save, so I'm going to click on that, By default, it gives you an alpha 1. Sort of the same way as when you go into layers and you make a new layer and you get the default of layer 1, channels is going to say alpha 1. So I can, of course, double click this and rename it. Okay, so I'm renaming it to I, so I know what it is. Now what also happened is when I clicked on it, you're able to see in isolation with the mask exactly what is selected. So this works in the same way as a layer mask does. Deselect. If I want to get back to see everything again, I go back up to my composite channel to kind of reset my view. So 2 ways that you can save a selection. With the example of the beak here, we went under the select menu and chose to save the selection. Or with an active selection in our document, we can use our icon here of saving the selection. To load a selection, there's a couple of really quick ways. The long way, of course, going under the select menu, load selection, and choosing what channel it is that you want to load. So in this case, it's showing me my spot color, which we haven't even talked about yet, the parrot, the example, which is on my beak, and my eye. So if I wanted to, I could click on one of these and it loads the selection. You can see my active marquee around that bird. Control D to deselect. That's the long way. The shorter way is to control click on the thumbnail. Oops. Control or command click. Now I clicked, and so that's why you're seeing this. Let's go back. Control D to deselect. Let's try this one more time. Command or control click right in the thumbnail, and there's my active selection. So now I can go to layers, I can do something on this new layer, I can do all kinds of editing manipulation if I want. So of course, if you want to do some changes to your alpha, paint with white or black, or you can have grayscale in here as well. Another really cool thing that you can do if I were to have a selection loaded. Now again, I could click on one of these and I could choose to load the selection here with this icon at the bottom. That's another way that we can load the selection. If I wanted to, I can go up to my select menu. There is a benefit of using the load selection here because I could choose another alpha, like I chose the eye, and I could choose to add it to. Click OK, and there it is. So I could do that. I can do a subtract, I can do an intersect. So there's a lot of different ways that we can play with multiple selections. Now the format that allows us to support an alpha channel, obviously Photoshop documents. If I do a file and save, I am going to be able to save both my spot and 3 alpha channels with this Photoshop document. Acrobat file, a PDF, will also save alpha channels. A TIFF or a RAW. A JPEG does not. So if you save it as a JPEG and expect to maybe bring it into, say, InDesign to do some page layout, and you want to take this mask to put your text really tight around that bird, you're not going to have it. A JPEG does not save an alpha channel, so remember that. Control D to deselect. Let's talk about the spot color. Now this looks like just black and white. Again, I can have grayscale here, but a spot channel, a spot color is a special premixed inks used in color printing. So typically if you're going to have spot channels, spot color channels, you're probably not going to be working in RGB. Instead, you're going to be working in CMYK. But I can choose to create a spot color here. Now this is what it looks like. So Pantone 259C is my spot color, and that is this. And how it's blending is dependent of what I've got going on. 100%, I'm at black. It's acting as though it's the red, the green, the blue, and now I have this extra additional color channel. So this gets a little bit more complex. Let's go ahead and make. So I know this is cutting off, but I'm choosing new spot channel, and here it is. So I can choose a color here. And what will happen, let's go down to a bright color, it'll give me the name of that Pantone. So if I'm sending this to print, they can see that. Click OK. And click OK. nothing happens. I don't see it, and that's because there's nothing on this spot color channel. Now, if I created something to fill with black, I could do this with text. I could do this with one of my shapes. I'm just going to do a simple box just like I did previously here. And I fill it with black. So I'm doing a Command or Control Delete to fill with my background color. Of course, can use the paint bucket or go under Edit and Fill. You can see now that I have black here. So this area here is my color. If I choose to move this around, which I can, you can see how it's just blending with what is around it and underneath of it. So it's adding another color. So in addition, in this case, to the red, the green, and the blue, I have these two additional colors. Again, I can turn them on, turn them off. There they are. So a spot color is just pre-mixed inks. It's an additional color to my color mode. So start playing with spot color channels. They are mainly used, like I said, in color printing. Alpha channels are going to be a huge asset to you, especially as you get more complex graphics, some complex projects, and you want to save out some of those selections that you've taken quite a while to get. Not a big deal. Just create an alpha channel, save that selection there.